around giving. Nobody likes it. It's one of those things you gotta do at least once a year. Everybody thinks, okay, the preacher's just up there trying to get more money. And since the Bible talks about it, it needs to be done, but let's just get through this. You ever heard the preacher stand up and about halfway apologize for preaching on giving and explain to you that he really is sorry that he's got to preach this message and that he wishes it wasn't the case, but because the Bible does talk about it, it's something that we really got to do? That is absolutely a complete misunderstanding of what the Bible teaches about giving. And I'm going to explain that to you. I think I'm going to show it to you. I think you're going to realize that Arthur C. Brooks wrote a book called Who Really Cares? His book was designed to see what the benefits of giving were. And he said lots of nonprofit organizations, people who are asking for donations, lots of times they approach it like, hey, just got to ask you for them, you know, we can't do what we do without you. He said, but that is completely the wrong approach, and you should be helping the people who give recognize that you are providing them a service that they cannot get anywhere else. And that them having the opportunity to give to your organization makes them a happier, better person. Now, here's what I'm going to explain to you this morning. God is going to give you the opportunity to give generously and liberally to Him so you can be a happier, better person. Now, you know that intuitively. I mean, if we were just to say, hey, do you believe that? Every one of you would say, yeah, I believe that. But do you really? When you listen to Jesus say, it's recorded in Acts chapter 20, verse 35, and remember the words of our Lord Jesus Christ when He said, it's more blessed to give than to receive. Do you believe that? Now, every one of us, it's kind of like that question that you know the answer that you got to give, but practically, do you really believe it? Let's see if we really believe that. I don't know what you do, don't know what kind of job you have, don't know how much you make. Let's just say you make $50,000. And the boss comes to you tomorrow, Monday, and says, hey, been watching how you work. I can see that you're a good, strong, hard worker. You get here on time. You don't slough off. You get your work done. I was wanting to give you a $5,000 raise. That's 10% of what you make per year. Would you mind accepting, taking a $5,000 raise? How many of us in here say, no, I really don't care for a raise. I feel like you're paying me fine. I'll just keep what I've got. Anybody say that? Your boss comes to you and says, you want a $5,000 raise? What's the first thing you say? Yes, sir. Be glad to take it. Thank you. You shake his hand, pump it with a little extra energy, and say, appreciate it. And you make sure you get to work on time the next day, don't you? Absolutely. Now, let's say you have a person, let's say from China, from Japan, from the place where you're doing mission work, and he stands up and you know him, you trust him, you know that the work that's getting done there is legitimate, and he says, I've got an opportunity for you guys. He said, we can literally house and feed 500 orphans in this area. It's going to take this much money. If we had 100 people that would all give $5,000 apiece, we could feed and house 500 orphans, and it would help us fulfill our commandment in James chapter 1 to visit or take care of the widows and orphans in their affliction. Who's he? Oh, now we all want the $5,000 raise, don't we? Every one of us. Not a person I've ever talked to says, don't want the raise. Who wants the opportunity to give $5,000 to a work like that? Well, hold on just a second. I thought you said it's more blessed to give than receive. Did you? Did you say it's more blessed? Yeah, you did. But then somehow we're all ready to take that $5,000. But when the opportunity comes where we could put God's money in a place that would do eternal good, sometimes we don't want to take that opportunity, do we? And so what I'm going to try to enforce on us today is the truth that it is more blessed to give than to receive. This isn't something you apologize for. It's not something you say, well, I got to do it. I'm giving you an opportunity to have a better, stronger, more powerful, more healthy existence on this earth. You want an opportunity like that? Well, yeah, you do. Most of us do, don't we? Well, let's look at what the Bible says about our giving. When you turn to Proverbs chapter 3, you're going to read in Proverbs chapter 3 a very famous passage that most of you know. But you didn't know where it was in relation to what I'm then going to tell you. You look there in verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord, Proverbs chapter 3, with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path. Sometimes people tell you stuff that you're not sure about, and you have to make a decision whether you're going to do that or not. And when I was growing up, my dad said, son, if I tell you that a chicken dips snuff, you better look under his wing. What in the world do you mean by that? Now, he didn't approve of snuff dipping and wasn't trying to encourage the practice, but here's what he said and what he meant. He meant that I know some things that you don't. And I am correct about some things when you think I might not be correct. When I say to you, son, it's not a good practice to drive 95 miles an hour down the road. It might be exciting, but it's very dangerous. A car is like a weapon, and you need to be very careful. You might not think that, but you need to just trust me. Now, if I tell you a chicken dip snuff, have you ever seen a chicken dip snuff? No, you haven't. They don't even have fingers that it looks like they could get snuff out of a can. But if I tell you one does, you need to look under its wing, because what was he saying you're going to find under the wing of that chicken? A snuff can. Because if I tell you that chicken dip snuff, then you might not think it. It might be something totally counterintuitive to you, but it's the truth. Now, when God says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge Him and He will direct your paths. That means sometimes He's going to tell you some stuff that you think, no, that can't work. Did Jesus tell the disciples, the apostles, some stuff that they thought, no way, that's not going to work? I'm going to go to Jerusalem, and within 2 or 3 days, the chief priests are going to take me and they're going to crucify me. And Peter said, no way, that can't work. But Jesus said, get behind me, Satan, you don't have the things of God in mind, but the things of men. What was he saying? You don't understand what I'm doing. But what I'm doing is right. Now, what God is saying is, if I tell you something, whether or not you believe it, you need to do it because I'm always right. Now, you understand that from this passage, and lots of times we talk about how that applies to marriage and the husband role and the wife role and the child, all that stuff. But lots of times we miss the context of this. Go down just the next few verses right there and look at verse 10. Verse 9. Honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first fruits of all your increase, so your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will overflow with new wine. Now, I was talking to an agricultural society. A society that the way they measured wealth was by how much grain was in their barns, how much grape juice, really that word wine, just lots of times just means straight grape juice, how much grape juice they had in their vats, etc. He says, honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first fruits of your increase. First thing that you do when you get any money at all is ask, how much am I giving to God? You don't ask, what's the rent this month? You don't ask, what do I want new this month? You don't ask, what bills do I have to pay this month? What's the first thing, according to this passage, you should do? Ask yourself, what am I giving to God? If you get $100 from your mom for Christmas, what's the first thing you should do with that $100 from your mom for Christmas? How much am I giving to God? If you get a bonus check at work, what's the first thing you should do with that bonus check? When you open it and you look and you see it's $500, what's the first thing you should do? How much of this am I giving to God? When he says the first fruits, what's he mean? The very first thing you do with any money you ever get is ask yourself the question, how much am I giving to God? Now he says, if you'll give in a way that honors God, then God will then bless you. Now in this instance, he says God's going to bless you with financial resources more. Now you stop right there and you say, wait, you can't teach that. Because you can't teach that if you give to God, then He'll bless you financially. Yes, you can. It's straight Bible, and I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. It's a proverbial truth. You know that the Proverbs says, train up a child in the way he should go, when he's old, he will not depart from it. You also know the Proverb says, a soft answer turns away wrath. Now, have you ever had someone angry at you and you've given them a soft answer and they continue to be angry at you? Yeah, you know that's true. But generally speaking, is it going to be the case that a soft answer turns away wrath? Yes, it's a truth. It's a general truth. Have you ever seen a parent or a group of parents train up a child in the way he should go or the way she should go, but that child ended up falling away, not doing what the parents taught them to do, and was not a faithful Christian? You ever seen that happen? Yes. So then do you say, well, so it just won't do us any good to train our kids to love God because that just doesn't work? Is that what you do? It's not what anybody does. They recognize, yes, there are some exceptions to this, but in a general manner, it is absolutely true. Now, what I'm going to explain to you is every now and then, yes, there are exceptions to God physically, financially blessing a person because they give. Look at the story of Job. God blessed him for quite some time, and then for a period of time, he took those physical blessings away. But it is a truth that you will be financially, physically blessed, along with emotionally and spiritually blessed when you give to God the way you should. Now, the reason that is so irksome to us is because we've seen so many televangelists get up there on TV and say, hey, if you'll send $1 today, then you will, by Monday, get $10 more. If you'll send us 100, we'll send you this prayer rug that's been prayed over by 47 people 27 times a day. And this prayer rug, if you'll sit on it and ask God for $1,000, you'll get a new truck. And that's what you'll hear. Okay, because the teaching's been abused, we almost then think you can't teach it. But it is a fact and it is the truth that generally speaking, financially and always emotionally and spiritually, you will be blessed when you give to God first and generously. Let me show you how that's the case. Turn over to Proverbs chapter 11. We're going to flip to Proverbs chapter 11, and then I want you to read verses 24, 25, and 26. There is one who scatters, yet increases more, and there is one who withholds more than is right, but it leads to poverty. The generous soul will be made rich, and he who waters will also be watered himself. There is a person that scatters. What's he saying? There's a person that gives away money. Let's say you got two people, one standing over here, one standing over there. This guy's got $10, that guy's got $10. This guy takes 5 of his and gives it to poor people. This guy over here says, I'm giving my money, I need my money, I got stuff to do with my money, and he holds his $10. Now, who's got more right now? This guy's holding $10. That guy just gave away 5. But here's what happens. This guy who's got $10, he's holding what he's got. He's misering it. He is stingy. And there's a leak in his roof. He has to pay $2 to fix it. And he was doing business, but because of the way he does business, people don't like to do business with his store because he's stingy and he's greedy. And so they start going over to this guy's store. And one of the guys that this guy helped with his money happened to have a couple of buddies that needed to shop at a place that sold nails, and he sells a bunch of nails. And so they start coming to him. And in the course of time, the guy who gave away his $5 now got 12, and the guy who kept his 10 has now got 3. Because the generous soul will be made rich, and he who waters will himself also be watered. Now, lots of times you stop and say, yeah, Kyle. I mean, that's Old Testament. It's true. It is. It's Old Testament. You think there's any truth in the Old Testament? Oh, there's some truth in the Old Testament, but you don't have to stop in the Old Testament. If you listen real close to the very good reading that was done for us, then you would hear Luke chapter 6, verse 38. Flip over there and let's see if we can get some New Testament verification for what we're saying here. New Testament verification for this principle of giving and being blessed because of your giving. Now, notice what I'm saying. Listen, I'm saying most of the time, not only will you be emotionally and spiritually blessed, but most of the time you'll be financially blessed. Now, you'll always be emotionally and spiritually blessed, and it'll always be better to give than receive. Always. And most of the time, that will even include financial, physical resources. Now, you think about it like this. Why would God give a generous, cheerful, liberal giver more financial, physical resources? If they're good, cheerful, generous givers, then what they're doing with His resources are bringing glory to Him, so what would He want them? I mean, if you're giving 20-25% of your income and he thinks, hey, where's the best place to invest my money that my name can be glorified? You think he's going to give it to the person that's giving 2% of their income or the person who's giving 25%? You can see why God would want to physically, financially bless a liberal giver because it comes back to His glory. Now, read Luke 6:38. 8 with me. Give, that's New Testament now, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be put into your bosom. For the same measure that you use will be measured back to you. Now some people say, yeah, I mean, that's talking about judging people and being kind to people, and okay, yeah, it is. It's talking about all that. But it's also talking about financial resources. Let me explain to you how you know that. This is a picture of market commerce. You understand what he says when he says, given will be given to you? Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, flowing over. Let me show you what that means. Guy goes to the market in the first century, and there's a person selling grain. Now, in this instance, the person selling the grain is God. And you're the person coming to buy the grain, according to Jesus' illustration. And the person selling the grain, God, says to you, hey, what kind of scoop have you been using to give to other people? All right, now stop right there, and that's where you start getting real. All right, how generous have you been with the Lord's church and with other people? Let's say you've been giving 1, 2, 3%. Every survey we've ever seen in the Lord's church says the Lord's church is giving about 4 to 6% of their income. 6 at the very highest. Some of them say about 2%. So let's say you pull out your little teaspoon. You look at it. This is what you've been giving God with. Giving to God with. And it doesn't look so big going over as it did when you were spooning out stuff, does it? Because when you were spooning that out, $20 looks like a lot in the plate, doesn't it? I mean, you got a $20 bill, you put it in there, and then you go to the movies and buy a movie ticket for $13 and a popcorn for $27. You know what I'm saying? You spend $50 at the movie, but when you put $20 in the plate, boy, that $20 sure looks like a lot of money, doesn't it? And then we spent how much on a truck? We spent $400 a month on a truck, and we spent $57 a month on the movie. And do you know most people spend more on the food for their dog a month than they give to any charitable organization? Oh, we got Fluffy's got to have his little chew toy for Christmas. And all right, so you get that little spoon that you've been dishing out with, and it doesn't look so big, and you give it to God, and he says, okay, here, let me take that, what you've been using. And he gets ready to start sending it back to you, and you say, well, I need something bigger. He says, well, use something bigger when you're giving. So you decide, okay, you're going up to the, I mean, that was the teaspoon. You know the difference between teaspoon, it's a little more than a pinch, really. But a tablespoon, like a deep well tablespoon, you know, it's like, look, boy, you get that thing out and you're giving people that tablespoon, and you think it's a, and then you go to God, he's selling grain, and he says, okay, give me what you've been using. That tablespoon doesn't look that big. I mean, you want snow shovel blessings, don't you? You don't want this tablespoon, I mean, you want something big. Well, if you want something big, you got to be using something big. But now here's the difference between God and you. You probably, we'll just say we got a cup now. We've got a cup. We've been using a cup to give. All right, great. God says, okay, give me the same cup you've been using. So you hand him the cup. And what you've been doing is just reaching into your grain and cupping it out to people. All right, so God says, let me have your cup. He takes it. And now the first thing he says is good measure. So here's what he does. He takes that cup and he fills it all the way to the top. And then you look at it. It's looking pretty full. He looks at it. It's looking full. But then notice what happens next. Pressed down. Now you haven't been pressing yours down. You've just been filling up and giving people. He takes that same cup you've been using, fills it up, and says, does this look about like what you've been giving? Okay, let's see what we can do. And presses it down. Now, when I was in high school, did a lot of yard work, especially in the fall. There was a lot of leaf raking, and we would go buy those big plastic leaf bags, and, you know, they were a little more than the average plastic bag, and so we wanted to conserve them as much as possible, and we would take a big handful of leaves and put them in that plastic bag, and it would be full. Wouldn't weigh much with one huge handful of leaves, but it would be full. But you know what you could do to put more leaves in that bag? You could press it down, right? So we press it down, and then we get another handful, and we put it in there. We press it down, get another handful, put it in there, press it down. And I had a little Nissan truck, and I would get in the back of my Nissan truck, and there the bag would be, and I'd jump out of my truck into the bag, up and down on top of the leaves, to get the most out of that bag I could. When you pressed it down, you could get 5, 6, 8, 10 times more than you could get if you just filled it up one. Well, so God says, give me your cup, you give it to him, the same thing you've been using, except God scoops it and then starts pressing it down. He's got a pretty heavy fist too. God presses it down. Okay, then he fills it up again. So now he's pressed it down, now it looks like he's back to the top. But then he says, pressed down, shaken together. I don't know when I came to the realization that this was the case. I loved Cool Ranch Dorito chips when they first came out. Now, showing my age a little bit, but it was just the cheese, nacho cheese. And then some genius of a chef. I mean, it had to be like 5-star, who had been studying the human palate for years of his life, came up with the flavor Cool Ranch. Now, you guys have always had the flavor, you younger folks, and so it's not real special to you probably because you've always had the choice. We didn't have the choice. It was nacho cheese, that was it, and then boom, Cool Ranch is the same. And now, my house, we didn't really buy the name brand stuff very much, especially Cool Ranch Dorito chips, because a bag of Cool Ranch Dorito chips was $3.50, and it's been that way for, $3.50 for a bag of chips that you could throw down in about an hour of watching TV. Okay, that was expensive. But here was the tragedy, the disappointment of a Cool Ranch Dorito chip bag. You would pay $3.50 for it and open it up. You know what's coming, don't you? Because this happened to you. It's not full. I'm thinking, I paid $3.50. This bag should be full. And then you look on the back. And on the back, lots of times, there's this little bitty, in the smallest print you can possibly read. It says, contents settle in transit. Well, why didn't you transit them first and then fill them up again? All right, settle in transit means when it left the factory, it was full. But what happens when it gets in that truck and that truck starts hitting bumps and going everywhere? Well, it was full to start out with, but those chips started settling, and when it gets to you, it's like, well, I'm going to say 1/8 of the way full, pretty close to that, because it settled in transit. It got shaken together, and it settled out. All right, so God takes that cup that you've been using, he scoops it, then he presses it down real hard, scoops it again, and now it looks totally full, and he settles it out again. Okay, now you got 3, 4, 5 times what you were giving out to people, and then he says, okay, not quite done. Scoops it up again. Now, when I was in preschool, we learned how you measure a cup. You take a butter knife, and you put it on this side of it, and you say, whoosh, scrape it off to where it's flat on the top. You ever teach anybody that when they're little kids? Yeah, maybe. Okay, watch what this measurement comes to you. He scoops it, presses it down. Scoops again, shakes it again. Scoops it again, and it looks like it's full. And then notice what the next passage says. Running over. So instead of going, flattening it off, he scoops it again so that it's piled up, so that it's pouring off the sides. Now, who wants that? Everybody wants that kind of deal. But a lot of us are scooping out with our little bitty teaspoon, and then we're passing it to God and saying, okay. And you can shake a little teaspoon, you can press it down, you can do everything there is to it, and it's not going to give you a whole lot more. It's going to be more than you're scooping out with your teaspoon, but teaspoon potential for pressing down, shaking together, and flowing over, you want more than that, don't you? And then the Bible says, gives into your bosom. The way that they carried stuff lots of times, about the way we carried hickory nuts when we were little kids, we would have hickory nut fights. And you couldn't hold very many in one hand, and especially if you were trying to throw with one hand and you would drop. So we would take now, much to our mother's chagrin, but we would take our shirt tails and grab the bottom of that shirt tail and pull it up, and then put nuts in our newfound pocket. See, and it would hold like 30 or 40 hickory nuts. And so you could hold that shirt tail with this hand, and with this hand you could throw, and you could just get one and throw, and get one and throw. You could hold 20 or 30 of those. Well, that's what it means to give into their bosom. There was a pocket on their robe where they would use it to buy grain and to hold the grain. And God says, after I get done, I'm going to take it, I'm going to press it, I'm going to scoop it, and then I'm going to shake it together, I'm going to scoop it again, and then I'm going to pour it over, and then I'm going to dump it into that pocket you've got. And you're going to go home with a ton more than you came for, and it's going to be a lot more than you bargained for. Now, isn't that what the Old Testament is saying? The generous soul will be made rich, and he who waters will be watered himself. That's what it's saying. Now, I'm going to take you to probably my favorite passage and all about. Now, let me tell you why I don't get through a whole lot of material on this. It's all so good. that I honestly, after I sat down from class, I got to be like 1/20th of what I wanted to discuss. And I thought, why is that? And then I thought, well, because 1 out of 5, 6 verses in the New Testament says something about giving. And there's 1,400 verses on giving. And if we were to explore it in full, it would take us a year of classes every single Sunday. We don't have that kind of time. But we do have another hour. So turn to Malachi chapter 3. Malachi chapter 3. Now, here's how I find Malachi most of the time. I turn to the very beginning of Matthew and then turn back a page. That's how I find Malachi right there. It's the last book of your Old Testament. If you've learned your Old Testament, you kind of rattle it off all like it's one word. Zechariah, Malachi. It's right there at the end. Malachi is preaching to the Israelites, and the Israelites don't agree with his message. He's trying to show them some truth that they just have refused to believe. They're blind to it, and he's trying to help them see it. So he goes right there in verse 8, and he asks them a rhetorical question. You know what a rhetorical question is? Before we go. Rhetorical question, one you ask for emphasis, not information. My dad, growing up, used to say, son, do you want to spank him? Did he think I was ever going to answer, yes, today, Dad? Today's the day. Thanks for asking. I feel like I've been needing one, and thanks for opening the door for me. Yeah. Okay, no, he didn't think that. Never thought. When he said, son, do you want to spank him? What's the rhetorical answer to that? No, because no kid wants a spanking. Okay, understood. Will a man rob God? What's the rhetorical answer to that? No. Why don't you rob God? Will a man rob a bank if he knows right when he steps over the threshold, the bank owner is going to know exactly who he is, going to know where he lives, and where to find him immediately when he walks out of the bank? No, you don't rob a bank like that. When the person knows everything about you and can find you immediately, you don't rob a bank like that. Do people rob God? No, they don't rob God because God knows who they are and where to find them. Okay, the rhetorical answer is no, and his audience is thinking no in their mind. So it's real surprising to them when he says, but you have robbed me, says God. Now hold on just a second. The rhetorical answer is no, people don't rob God. But then God accuses the Israelites of robbing him. Now what if I were to say to you, you've been robbing from God. You've been stealing from God. What's your next thought? How? I have not stolen anything from God. You know, it's like some people have. I mean, actually stolen stuff from God. I was talking to a person that was in the congregation not long ago. They said when the plate goes past this one person who makes change in the plate, they come out with more than they put in. They're not making change, they're making something else, but it's not change. They're taking more than they put in. John Smith told the story about when he was a little kid. His dad would go into the little store down the road that had concrete floor. He was son of bare feet. It's a long, long time ago. When a soda, a Nesbitt Orange was the name of this soda, was 5 cents. It was a nickel. Said his dad would slap that nickel on the counter and say, give me a Nesbitt Orange. John Smith said he thought it'd be the coolest thing. Now, this is way long ago when the parents drank sodas and the kids didn't. Way back. He said he thought it'd be the coolest thing to walk into that store if he had a nickel in his hand, smacking on that counter, and his toughest, deepest, manliest voice say, give me a Nesbitt Orange. His only problem was he didn't have a nickel. And he couldn't think of how to get a nickel. He didn't see a nickel in his future anytime soon. But then it dawned on him. He saw a nickel every week in the plate. And that plate was left because they were in a congregation that in the summer didn't have air conditioning. And so everybody would go outside after services where it was cool, and they would leave that plate in, and if he snuck in just right, he could steal a nickel. And that's exactly what he did. Snuck back in, stole a nickel. Said Monday rolled around, and he was thinking he was going to walk into that store and smack it on that counter and say, give me that drink. He said, but there's just something just irking him. Just worming into his mind like that might not be a good idea. So we thought, well, maybe I'll do it Tuesday. Well, by Tuesday he was thinking, this is terrible. What have I done? There's no, okay, I might still. By Wednesday he was thinking, I'm going to die. I'm going to die before I get this nickel back. He said by Thursday night and Friday night he was having dreams. He said he's having dreams about that preacher. He said that preacher was a pretty heavy-set guy. He was bald, sweated when he preached. His face would get real red, he said. And in his dream, he was in the middle of the sermon, and right in the middle of the sermon, he looked at John Smith and he said, you stole God's nickel. Poor little kid thought he was going to die before Sunday to get that nickel back in the plate, and he did. Said it was the greatest feeling he's ever felt. Putting that nickel back in the plate, realizing he was still alive, to thank the Lord he had an opportunity to get his nickel back. You ever stolen any money from the plate? You ever decided, hey, this congregation doesn't need these songbooks, I think I can sell them on eBay? No, y'all ain't done that. And guess what? The Israelites, y'all ain't done that. It's not proper grammar. I know, but you haven't. I'm telling you. The Israelites didn't think they had either. They were thinking we'd never chip gold off the temple. We've never tried to take coins out of the treasury. We haven't stolen anything from God. He says, but you have. And they say, how? Show me how we've stolen any money from God. He says, okay. In tithes and offerings. Oh, well, let's logically think through our principles here. This morning we talked about how the money's not yours. You don't keep it. It stays here when you leave. It's not yours. If it's not yours, you're a steward. And a steward doesn't get to do what they want to with the money. They do what the master wants them to do with the money. A bank is the steward of your money. You go down to the bank, you deposit $3,000. You come back next week and say, hey, I'd like to make a withdrawal for $1,000. They said, I thought that was ours. We spent all that. We got $50 left. Here, you can have it. You going to do much banking with a bank like that? No, you're not, because they don't understand stewardship. God says, you've been stealing from me. People say, no, we haven't. How? We don't chip gold off the temple. We don't do it. He said, you have not been giving me a tenth of everything that I'm giving you. Now, to this point right here, and people's ears perk up. I mean, they do. Especially people who are just looking for a number. I mean, they're saying, Kyle, do you mean to tell me that we got to give 10% of our income because the Bible in the New Testament doesn't say anything about that? All right, now stop right there and listen to yourself. I have heard every excuse under the sun not to give 10% of your income. Every one. I have had a person sit across from me and say, we got little widows in our congregation that couldn't afford to give 10%. No, you don't. There's no such thing. Let me tell you what I mean by that. There was a widow in the New Testament who, the Bible says, Jesus, in Mark chapter 12, sat opposite the treasury looking at what people would give, and that little widow had 2 mites, and she gave every single bit of it, and Jesus Christ said she was doing something great. You never met a person that poor, and she gave 100% of what she had. Do you know in the New Testament there are 3 percentages ever mentioned in the whole New Testament? 3. Twice, actually there are only 2. There's only 3 times percentage mentioned. Twice it's 100%. The little widow and the rich young ruler. Another time it's 50%. And that was when Zacchaeus talked to Jesus and said, I give 50% of all my goods to feed the poor. Now let me ask you a question. In the Bible, every single time in the Old Testament, the word generous was applied to any person. They had to be giving at least 10%, not to mention free will offerings and leaving the corners of their field and not gleaning their orchards again. When you calculate it all up, it looks like the generous people in the Old Testament would give about 33%. Now, some people have said, well, hold on just a second, Kyle, that was part of their taxes. No, it wasn't. Because in the New Testament, the Romans are causing the first century Jews to pay taxes. You know what God is still asking them to do? Give 10% of their income, along with free will offerings and everything else. Now, I'm not going to say that there is a verse in the New Testament that says, give 10% exactly. And I'll tell you why I think there's not a verse. Because I think if there was a verse like that, some people who are making $1 million would give 10% and say, that's all I got to give. I gave my 10% and that's it. I can't believe and I can't fathom the idea that an Old Testament Jew who was given something like 30% of his income when he became a Christian with a new covenant, a better sacrifice, a better high priest, would then say, yes, Christian, now I can give 2%. Can you imagine that? And if the word generous was never used in the Old Testament for a person who was given less than 10%, could that word generous be used in a New Testament for a person who was given less than that? I just don't think it could happen. And so here's what I'm teaching. I am teaching that I believe the Bible through principle explains to us that we should be giving at least 10% of our income. Do you hear that? Let me say it again. I am teaching that the Bible through principle says we should be giving at least 10% of our income. And I think this passage is explaining to us that if we're not, what does God say that the children of Israel were doing when they weren't doing that? Robbing from God. Now let me tell you what B.B. Black did. He never heard any teaching on giving. He was 20-something years old, never heard any teaching on giving. He came to this verse and said, I am in trouble. He said, I've been stealing from God. He said, I've hardly given God anything, never made a calculation of it, never stepped up and thought about any type of thing like this. And so I'm going to start. In fact, he calculated what he had made in his whole life up to that point of being, I think he was 28. Calculated what he made up to his point in time at 28. And he said 10% of what I've made from that. Now, eventually he started giving much more, and I won't tell you how much. I did ask him one time. But he gave back to the Lord everything that he had not given God up to that point. Now that was pretty awesome. But when you look at this, God's not even asking the children of Israel to do that. He's not even saying retrofit it. He's saying just start right now. And what? And what? Now notice what he says. Bring all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and prove me now in this. You know there's only one passage in all the Scripture that says, test me. God says right here, only time in all the Scripture where he says, prove me, test me, and see if what I'm telling you is the truth. Do you know who loves lessons on giving? You would think those things was the opposite. You know who loves to hear lessons on giving? People who are giving 20, 30, 40, 50%. I know a guy right now, if you were preaching on giving, he's sitting there in the pew thinking how he can give more. His son told me, I would never tell you who it is. His son told me he gives 63% of everything that comes to him in the course of the year. And at the end of the year, he is looking for more ways to give more. You know who loves to hear sermons on giving? People who are generous, liberal givers. You know who hates it? You know who can't stand to hear sermons on what we need to do with our money? No, it doesn't really say you need to do that. You know who can't stand that? People who don't. Give generously and liberally. You know why? Because they haven't tested God. They haven't proved God. They haven't given him a shot. Now when my daughter was born, my son and my parents were there. They were playing with my son who was 20 months at the time, 20 months old. My daughter was brand new, was in the hospital, and we had our camera going on, and we were talking to parents about coming, grandparents, everything. Well, my son is playing with my dad, his granddad, and my son is getting up on the couch and jumping off to my dad. And boy, they're having great, it's a game of trust. The granddad is so worthy of that trust, and my son's jumping, he's catching it, my son's cracking up, he's putting it back. We got it on film, my dad can't deny that this happened. So he puts it back up. So he puts his arms out and starts talking to somebody over here with his arms out. Well, my son doesn't see that he's not paying attention, and he jumps. And falls straight to the hospital for bam, hits his head. Well, it doesn't hurt him too bad. I mean, it's not like stitches or anything. He's got this little red mark, and he looked up like he can't believe he's just been dropped. And my dad picks him up and hugs him and says, sorry, puts him back up there. And says, you know what my son? He's not jumping again. You know why he's not jumping again? Because he jumped one time and Dad missed it. Do you know what the Bible is telling you? Jump. You don't believe you can give 10, 15, 20, 50%? Try it. Just jump. Because God's never missed a person. And he says, you test me and see if I'm not telling you the truth. And see, notice what the text says, if I will not open the windows of heaven for you and pour on you so many blessings that you cannot hold them all. He says, I'm going to dump on you so many blessings that you can't hold them all, but you got to jump. You've got to lean on your own understanding in all your ways. You've got to acknowledge me. What if I were to stand up here today? Now, this is hypothetical. No matter how many times I tell people this is hypothetical, everybody comes to me afterward and says, hey, I just shook your hand, where's my $100? Work with me. Hypothetical. What if I said, I'm not a rich man, but to prove my point, hypothetical. Anybody who comes up to me after this sermon and shakes my hand, I'll give you $100. I know some of you don't believe that. I know a preacher's never given you a $100 bill. But if you will come to me after this sermon, you don't even have to say good sermon, you can say I hate it. But if you will shake my hand, I'll give you $100. After the song. We sing the song. Some of you come up and you shake my hand. Some of you are so used to walking out that back door, you think, hey, you got $100 to give to every person in here. There's no way that's going to happen. And you get up and you start walking that way, and you think, well, I might go down there, but no. And you walk out. And people who shook my hand walk out beside you, and they're holding $100. You talk to the generous little givers, and they'll tell you God does exactly what he says. They're holding $100. And you say, where'd you get that $100? You say, well, preacher said go shake his hand, he'd give you $100. I went and shook his hand, he gave me $100. No, he didn't. Yeah, he did. He did not know why. Yes, he did. Where do you think I got them? Well, he's out of my now. And you just keep on walking. Now look, if you keep on walking, after you've seen people who got it, and God promised he'd do it, whose fault is it that you don't have so many blessings that you can't hold them on? Not God's. Now, the greatest blessing you'll ever be given, the gift of Jesus Christ. And another thing that is so wonderful about giving is because it helps us be in tune with the character of God. For God so loved the world that he gave. God's a giver. Are you a giver? And this morning, have you given your life to Christ? He gave his for you. Will you give yours to him? Will you repent and be baptized like they did on the day of Pentecost and be added to the Lord's church by God himself? If you will, come as we stand and as we sing.